And we are live. Hello everyone. Welcome to this new series about concepts, self-help, personal development concepts, the things that are most searched, the things that are most wanted by you. Please, if there is a topic that you're interested in, let me know in the comments and I will cover it. I will do my best to cover it, of course. And I'm Nick Redmark. I am a professional life coach. If you want a free coaching session where you can get a taste of what coaching is like, where you can design your own life so that it doesn't just happen to you, so that you happen to life, there is a link in the description below. You just have to pick a date and a time and we can get rolling. First hour free. Okay, what is this series of videos about? I'm starting it off with motivation, which is one of the most searched terms out there when it comes to personal development. On Google, more than 600,000 times a month people search for the word motivation. If we then look for motivational quotes, we find 1.5 million searches per month. So there's definitely interest there. And what are these videos about? Basically, it's me brain dumping everything that comes to mind that I have learned about motivation, basically putting it all out there and hopefully learning something new myself. So after having like kind of expressed the things that are somewhere in my mind, I will also check out the Wikipedia page and perhaps add something to that. So as you see, as you might not know if you're seeing this later, this is live, so it's kind of improvised. Let's see what I know. I'm happy to discover it with you. As they say, the best way to learn something is to teach it. So at the very least, this is going to help me, and I also hope it's going to be useful to you. So you see here I have a mind mapping software that I just subscribed to. Let's see whether it slows me down or whether I can use this in a productive way. What do I know about motivation? Well, at the very first, please let me know actually whether this is, maybe I should zoom in a bit. In. So I guess this is big enough. So at the very least I know, that's long, I think I should zoom out again. You see, I'm really getting started with this. I'm learning to do as I go along. Okay, at the very basic, the most basic distinction that comes to mind for me is that there is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Wait, I'm also learning to use the software, as you see. Extrinsic motivation. And when it comes to, well, can I move this around? Nice. Okay. When it comes to intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, I recommend watching this talk by Dan Pink. It's very interesting. Basically, if I recall correctly, I have seen it a couple of years ago. What he explains is that extrinsic motivation is best for repetitive tasks where you don't have to be creative. So like if I tell you, okay, you have to put things in a box as fast as possible, as many times as possible, and I will pay you for each box, that's extrinsic motivation, and it works best for these kinds of tasks. So I'm going to add this here. Let's see, still, as I said, I'm still learning to use this software. No, I didn't want to do that. Just a second. I have to learn how to move this around. So, interesting. Let's remove this. So, I want to add a child to this, yes. So, what's useful about, okay, sorry, I should start with extrinsic since this is what I've been talking about. Extrinsic motivation is used for repetitive, let's call them brain dead tasks, okay? It's useful for that. And then what Pink talks about is that the tasks where you need to use your creativity, that are unpredictable, where the solution is not clear in advance, where you have to kind of be creative, perhaps maybe more of a right brain activity, then extrinsic motivation is actually counterproductive. So if I tell you, find a solution to a complex problem as fast as possible, and the faster you are, the more I will pay you, for example, that's actually counterproductive. It will slow me down, it will be a distraction. So for this kind of creative, I'm still learning to use this. No, I actually would like to add one to this. So we are talking about creative, let's see, unpredictable tasks. So for this kind of tasks, you need intrinsic motivation. And I haven't really, this software, what is this? Still learning to use this. Go away. Okay. So there we are. And what maybe I haven't really explained actually what intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are. Intrinsic motivation is when you actually believe in the outcome of the task itself. You know, like you see that what you do has value and you believe it and you want it. So that's intrinsic motivation. And extrinsic is basically the kind of consequences of doing the task that are not related to the actual direct outcome of the task. For example, there is one way that one can use extrinsic motivation by making a deal with someone. So I have to work out, right, every day, whatever, or a few times a week. And the outcome of that is I'm going to get fitter. So that's, if I'm really motivated to get fitter, that's my intrinsic motivation. But if, on the other hand, I tell someone, if I don't work out, I have to please check that I work out, otherwise I will have to pay you some money. That's extrinsic motivation. And in this case, since we are talking about a task that is kind of repetitive and not so creative, it actually helps because you just need to get the work done. So extrinsic motivation can help you. Okay, let's talk about conscientiousness. That's another concept that comes to mind. So let me write this here. Conscientiousness is an important factor here because conscientiousness is one of the big 5 personality traits. It's if you don't know the big 5 personality model, I'm actually going to add it here as a hint. How can I add here? Big 5. I'm going to talk about the big 5 in another video. The big 5 is one of the most reliable models in psychometrics about personality. So there are big 5 kind of stable personality traits in life. And relatively stable, of course, they can vary, but slowly and with a lot of work often. So conscientiousness is one of the personality or like the personality trait that predicts success the most in terms of money, in terms of career achievement and so on. And conscientiousness is the ability to do the thing that you think you have to do even if you don't feel like. So it's a kind of a dutiful, careful kind of approach or like attitude to life where you think, okay, I have to do it and then I will do it. And people low in conscientiousness perhaps they think they have to do something, but if they don't feel like, they don't do it. And it's, to a certain degree, it's bad news for these people, me included. I'm low in conscientiousness, extremely low, because it's hard for me to force myself to do something. But there are workarounds. Let's talk about that later. But conscientiousness, anyway, is unfortunately for people who are not conscientious, one of the biggest predictor of success in life after IQ. And yes, well, because it's about personal discipline and doing the thing. But of course, I think there is a downside also, which is you probably tend to be a bit more conformist, right? Because you just follow the what you have to do, and you're actually motivated by duty, right? So, and sometimes maybe it's the right thing to try out something different and not just follow the path. People high in conscientiousness are good managers, for example. And there is this other trait called openness, and so people high in openness, of which I am one, extremely high in openness, are perhaps good entrepreneurs, like good at exploring and building new businesses. But then if it comes to kind of managing them, high conscientiousness is better. And yes, I mean, being an entrepreneur is not so predictive of success because of the extremely high failure rate of entrepreneurs, right? So it's not easy to find. So if the business that is going to be successful needs to find an idea that hasn't been tried yet, well, then there are so many possibilities to actually get it wrong. So that makes it hard. But then the upside is huge, right? Like, so if you get it right, then you can be highly successful. Unfortunately, that happens only to a few people. Anyway, so motivation, conscientiousness relates to motivation in that way, in the sense that conscientious people are motivated by a sense of duty. In a sense, we could actually go through all Big Five, because each personality trait is motivated by something different. So actually, let me invert this Big Five. So, and here we have conscientious, motivated by duty. So, and probably routine and kind of this more stable life. And so, but let's move on, right? Actually, I again made a mistake here. Okay, so people high in openness are motivated by ideas, interest. So I am high in openness, and I managed to get a master's in computer science. And how is that possible, right? High openness, low conscientiousness, in theory I should have failed. But the fact that my trick was always to get myself interested in what I had to do, right? Like, so I wouldn't have done it by myself if I didn't feel like, but I had my way of tricking myself into getting actually interested in what I had to do. And that has worked every time, really, it does work. So it's a good trick, right? If you know what you're motivated by, then harness that. So it helps to know your personality, and there is this website called understandmyself.com. Let's see. It's this website, I recommend it, where you can do a test and learn your Big Five personality traits. Again, this is the place where I know from that I'm high in openness and low in conscientiousness, which are my most extreme traits. Now let's move on. We have extraversion, motivated by people, right? So if you want, like, if you're an extroverted person, you will like to be with other people. And so if you want to get yourself to do something, then try to make it so that you will be with other people when you actually do it. So for example, don't work out alone, right? Work out with other people. I'm mildly relatively introverted, so that's not a motivating factor for me. This is why I have kind of my own home gym, and I actually like much more the idea of having like a quick routine where I don't have to travel anywhere. So that's how I deal with it. Okay, let's move on. what other traits? There is agreeableness. So agreeable people, I guess, are motivated by authority. I mean, I'm to a certain degree, I'm kind of inferring this. This is the science of Big Five traits is established, but like what these people are motivated by, I'm kind of inferring from the definition. I'm not citing science, even though I believe that probably that exists. So the fact that agreeable people are motivated by authority, I kind of inferred it from the fact that agreeable people tend to put others first. So that's the definition of agreeableness. And disagreeable people actually tend to put themselves first. They can be impolite. They just kind of don't care what other people think about them. Okay, and then the last trait is neuroticism. I think one should look at the other way, because neuroticism is basically how much you suffer per unit of threat, right? So if there is something that's threatening, some people will not suffer and like just deal with it. But if you're neurotic, then it will make you more afraid, more kind of apprehensive. And so I guess here there is more of a negative advice, right? If you are high in neuroticism, then don't associate the thing that you want to learn with danger or with kind of like this anxiety thing. Obviously, sometimes that's not possible, so you need to find motivation elsewhere. The opposite of neuroticism is emotional stability. Perhaps there would be kind of an opportunity to look at the opposite of all these traits and see what these people are motivated by. I'm not sure I know the answer. I mean, neuroticism is, for example, one of those. Okay, so knowing your personality helps because your personality is a way that is kind of that's one of the sources of your motivation. Like that's who you are. That's what moves you. So that helps. So let me think other things. Motivation. One thing that comes to mind is the limits to motivation. So there is not only motivation. There are things that you do without needing motivation, and those things are called habits. So if you lack, I'm making a mess here. If you lack motivation around something, then it's going to be extremely hard to do it all the time if you don't make it a habit. So it helps to think in terms of building habits. So whatever limited amount of motivation you have, use it to build habits. And there is a whole science of building habits. I'm making a video about that soon. There is a book that I can recommend which is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm going to write it here. Atomic Habits, James Clear. I really recommend this book. I'm reading it, I'm not done yet, but I've read one other book about habits that's kind of like one of the most searched for, but this is much better. And I'm going to make a video about it. And so if you have a limited amount of motivation or / willpower, in my mind motivation and willpower are kind of synonymous. I don't know if you, okay, I'm diverging here. Let's add this for later here, willpower. Let's talk about willpower later. Can I zoom out a bit? Okay, we were talking about habits. You have a limited amount of willpower, let's say every day. And the best way to use it is to build a habit. And since you, there is a right way to build a habit and the wrong way, and or like there are techniques to do that, and I don't want to go too deep into that. But for example, one thing is it's a bad idea to try to build too many habits at a time, because you have that limited willpower, and it takes repetition. So that's important. You need to repeat the behavior for it to become a habit, and so it's a good idea to do that, and to kind of focus your willpower, your limited willpower, on that. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to talk about habits another time. Willpower, I would be interested in knowing more about willpower and how it relates to conscientiousness, right? Because willpower sounds to me like doing something you don't feel like doing. And that's something that conscientious people are strong in. So maybe willpower basically relates to that, right? Like you have more willpower if you are higher in conscientiousness. Maybe it's the same concept. So but motivation, in a sense, it's a more powerful concept to think at, because willpower is also related to shame, right? I have low willpower, I'm lazy, that kind of thing, and we should stop shaming people for having low willpower, because if willpower is conscientiousness, well, that's part of your personality. I mean, you inherited that to a certain degree. The good news is that conscientiousness raises a bit with age, and that you can kind of learn the habits of conscientiousness by training them. And again, habits then are things that you can do without needing motivation, but you need the skill set to build habits. Okay, let's think about other things. Let's talk about another topic. I'm going to add it here, which is called integration. And it's related to intrinsic motivation, but I don't think intrinsic motivation exhausts it. So I'm a very open person, and I have trouble with committing and sticking to something. One way I deal with it is by basically designing a life where everything I feel like doing has a benefit for this design system. So right now I am doing an education in coaching. I need people, by the way, so I offer you a free coaching hour. Just pick a date below. So I hope you are interested in that. And so I'm doing coaching, plus I'm doing these online videos, and plus I'm programming a community app where I try to integrate all these personal development concepts that I'm learning, and reading, writing, making videos, coaching. So all these activities kind of help each other, right? If I read something, I will know more and I can talk about it more. If I talk about things more, I will also learn things. And then by doing this, by exposing myself, perhaps someone will be interested in the coaching and I can coach. And also I've seen patterns emerge from the actual coaching experience. So there are so many synergies between all the things that I'm doing, that if, in theory, if I wake up and I feel like doing one thing, it's okay, because it will have ripple effects on the other things. And so there is a high degree of flexibility, which comes by design. And to a certain degree, I've really worked on getting, this is maybe another concept. So integration is a good one. Try to integrate your interests and create synergies between them. So that's a good strategy, especially if you're high in openness, if you have many interests, right? So that you don't wake up tomorrow with a completely new idea that has nothing to do with what you're doing now. So that's really helpful. Let's add another concept here, which I would call depth. It's still a form of integration, but it's a deep one. So I have taken a lot of time to kind of really go deep and understand myself and what I really want. So depth / vision. So the more time you take and really understand what you actually want in the future, that's the core of intrinsic motivation, right? Like, what is the life that you want to live? Take the time to brainstorm that, and you will discover contradictions, things that you kind of want that to contradict each other. And then again, like, you need to integrate those. But like, if you go deep and allow this process to take place of really defining, like, what is it that I want? Again, coaching, I can recommend as a process to do that, because sometimes you get stuck in your own inner circles. If there is someone who talks, who kind of reflects what you do on a whiteboard like this one in the back, or basically repeats back what he heard, maybe summarizing it, can be really helpful. So going deep, that's also something helpful. And again, it's an insurance policy against in the future waking up and having forgotten some really important aspect of your life. So that's really good if you go deep and try to kind of integrate, again, like, all parts of your personality. Then there's another aspect. Why does it go down here? No. Okay, let me write it first. Called commitment, or resolution, one could call it as well. So resolution. Yes, to a certain degree, at a certain point, if you can go deep and try to integrate all your interests, you won't be able to integrate everything. There will be things that you have to kind of give up on, and there will be things that you have to kind of say, I'm going to do that at least for a while to see what happens, even if I'm not 100% sure I really like it or that it will work. So you can integrate things and go deep, but you cannot do it forever. At a certain point you need to act, and act in a consistent way for a while, right? And this really is possible only with commitment, which I would recommend. If you really commit to something, then do make a ritual out of it, like sign, like write down your contract with yourself, sign it, turn on a candle, whatever, you know, like share it with other people, depending on the depth of your commitment, right, or what you want to generate. And that's also something that can kind of remind yourself of the power of your motivation. Like, once you kind of go deep and find your truth, then commit to it and really put reminders that you actually wanted. Maybe hang something on the wall that this is really something important to you, that you're really committed to. Like, as a good metaphor, imagine like these old sacrifices of like killing a goat, you know, like if you do that, that has a strong emotional impact on you. And so a ritual is meant to provide that. Or like, I don't know, making a tattoo, or, you know, it really depends on how extreme your commitment has to be. But these kinds of things really help you kind of burn your decision into your identity. Of course, not everything needs to be done like that. I'm a big fan of experimenting, of saying, okay, I'm going to try this for a few months and then see what happens. But still, if you are low in conscientiousness, you actually need to then do that for 2 months, and that can be hard. So like, this emotional weight of a commitment ritual can help you. Of course, until you have built the habits, right? And then the habits, you don't need to put that much energy into it. You can just kind of keep nurturing them, keep them alive, maintaining, go to maintenance mode. Okay, let's see. So this is all that comes to mind for me right now about habit, about motivation. Let's see whether there is something else that I can, maybe, yeah, since the concept of this series is that I talk about what I know, and then maybe I learn something in addition. Let's just quickly check out the Wikipedia page. Motivation is the reason for people's action, willingness and goals. Motivation is derived from the word motive, blah blah blah. Needs, wants, desire. Motivation is one direction to behavior. Okay, let's just scroll through them. So neuroscience, Okay, yeah, something that I could add to this whole thing is that the let me add it here. The neurotransmitter of motivation is called dopamine. So you can learn about what dopamine does. Dopamine, basically, imagine that in your brain you have a highway, or like your neurons form a street, right? The street then generates the behavior. So the signal goes down and then the behavior happens. And dopamine, if what you do then generates a reward, the reward will like secrete dopamine, and the dopamine will basically go back this route and strengthen it. So out of a street becomes a highway, and it becomes harder and harder not to do the behavior. So if it's a bad behavior, be careful what you practice, right? And dopamine is, interestingly, even though it's called a reward neurotransmitter, it's not a satisfaction neurotransmitter. It's more like the thing that makes you want more of it, you know. And so, for example, if you click on the notification button, it gives you a little kick of dopamine if there is something there. So that's also how the social media and so on can influence us and our behavior. So yeah, to generate motivation, one kind of good way to do that is by rewarding yourself. And interestingly, it's more powerful if the reward is unpredictable, because if you predict it, then you're less sensitive to it. And that's also the slot machine principle, which is why social media shows notifications selectively. Like Facebook doesn't show you all notifications at once. It just shows you maybe 1 and then 0 and then 3, and this generates this kind of unpredictable reward, which then reinforces the behavior. So yeah, like we are subject to all these ways that companies want to influence our behavior / generate motivation, but we can also harness these principles and learn how to do them. Of course, how specifically might depend on you and your personal life situation. So again, in closing, I'm a life coach. I'm offering you a free hour of coaching so that you can get a taste of what it is about. Usually a coaching kind of progress takes a bit longer, and since I'm collecting practice hours for my exam in summer, I can make you a really good price. Thank you for watching. Again, link in the description below. Just pick a date, and see you, I guess, tomorrow with another book review and another concept. Bye.